Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, your home for Pittsburgh Penguins news and analysis. You can find us on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh, or you can catch us anywhere you get your podcast from. I'm your host, Nick Belsky, joined as always by Nick Horwat. And we've got a good show for you guys today, despite the fact that the Penguins week started off on the wrong foot with Marcus Pettersson being deemed out week to week with a lower body injury. We're going to ask the question simply, could that absence trigger another losing stretch for the Pittsburgh Penguins? And then, speaking of struggles, is it time for the Penguins to put their stars back together? Because both of them are struggling to light the lamp. And then Tristan Jarry made headlines over the weekend for post-game comments. Were they warranted? Or what? We'll get into all of that and more on the Tip of the Ice-Burgh. And we're going to kick things off on today's show with the biggest storyline surrounding the Pittsburgh Penguins this week, which is the Penguins losing Marcus Pettersson to injury. He left Saturday night's game after a collision with, I believe it was Drake Batherson, and more specifically, a collision with the boards, which looked very, very awkward. He immediately went down the tunnel, did not return to that game, and then yesterday was designated week to week with a lower body injury by head coach Mike Sullivan, replaced in practice at least by Matt Grzelcyk on the second pairing alongside of Erik Karlsson. Listen, all in all, the Penguins had come around after a bit of an abysmal start, 6-2-1 in their last 9 games, which is a very good record. But do you believe this injury, losing Marcus Pettersson, especially if it's longer term, will trigger another fall off?
I don't know about fall off. I mean, Penguins been playing okay. It's not like Marcus Pettersson's been playing his best hockey this season. But at the same time, injuries like that to players like that sometimes, and especially in the Penguins case, are usually what galvanizes a team almost, what makes them turn it up a little bit more. I mean, it's what made Malkin an MVP winner, an MVP player back in the day whenever Crosby would go down. So it made him one of the greatest in the game. Anytime Sid would go down, Malkin would step up. I don't know who on this defense can do something like that.
Yeah.
But at bare minimum, you get a little sense of, well, maybe the group as a whole kind of fills the roles in their own way, steps up in their own way to cover for what's being lost here. So, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if a dip happens at least, but I don't know about a full meltdown almost. I'd say, look for maybe Kris Letang to be the veteran that he is and play a little wiser. I don't see Erik Karlsson playing too much wiser, but maybe he also acts like a veteran and tries to maybe pinch one less time a game. I don't know. And we'll just see what happens with Matt Grzelcyk and Ryan Graves. It's going to be a little frightening, but for what it's worth, I could see at least doing the whole, stepping up as a team bit in this situation.
Yeah, the one problem that I have with believing in that is, one, this is not the same Penguins team as we've seen in the past who's been able to do that. Because, I mean, even you look at Kris Letang going out for the playoffs, who was it that stepped up? Ron Hainsey. Unsuspecting, but still he was able to do so, and kind of the group was utilized as a group and not just stars and then whoever's underneath. But I think this is already a pretty overextended grouping on the defense. Not only were they kind of awful, or are they kind of awful defensively and losing their best defensive defenseman, but Owen Pickering is already kind of overextended. He's played 20 minutes a night the last 2 games, which is the first time in his career. How long can a 20-year-old continue to do that? Not to mention the fact that you'd have to imagine that he has to step up a little bit more on the penalty kill and play a little bit more ice time on that unit as well. Grzelcyk with Karlsson. I mean, Matt Grzelcyk for the longest time was playing in a top 4 role and probably shouldn't have been. And then he gets bumped down for now only 4 games. And he's back up, not only back up in a top 4 situation, but back up with Erik Karlsson. That pairing as a whole scares me. I like your optimism, but at the same time, I don't share it, unfortunately, because I just think that this is a group that is already overextended and it's putting players in positions where I'm not sure they're going to be ready to succeed.
Yeah, I could see that too. It's going to be it's like I said, it's going to be a tough stretch. I don't have the fullest of confidence in it.
Yeah.
The only thing that comes to my mind is this, especially if it's a long-term thing. And I mean, the idea of this affecting his draft capital is a whole different discussion. Does this spur the Penguins to maybe give some of those signees from the offseason a chance? I mean, I know, like, taking preseason performances out of it completely and just going, well, the space is open. It's time to experiment with what this team has if/when Marcus Pettersson does get traded down the line. It's time to see what this team is capable of. Can Sebastian Aho turn it on at the NHL level again? Can it, Jackson Ivany has proved it before, but can he prove it again? I mean, I know I'm going back and forth between righties and lefties here, but can Mac Hollowell find what made him, I believe, a high draft pick? Don't quote me on that, but give him Penguins signed him for a reason. And same with Philip Kral. Like, those four names specifically, I'm not saying they're all going to get a chance, but how much can Marcus Pettersson's time away help boost those guys into the lineup, at least getting a look? Again, like I said before, usually experimentation is preserved for early in the season, unless you're the Penguins this year, in which case it is you're experimenting all year, and this is just another example of you might just have to. Because genuinely, yeah, the Penguins went on a bit of a run there. Did they still, when we discussed it, it still didn't feel like they had playoff aspirations.
True. True. I mean, at the end of the day, you're trying to experiment, but here's the one problem with that. And I didn't want to cut you off, but this is as of December 11th, and there hasn't been very many updates outside of that. Right now, the injury list for Wilkes-Barre is extensive, including Jack St. Ivany, Sebastian Aho, Nikolai Nizov, Scooter Bricky, Mac Hollowell, and Philip Kral. So when I say overextended, I should have included that, but like crazy amount of injuries. Then you add on Ravis Ansons, Emil Bemstrom, Avery Hayes, and Jimmy Huntington. And this is all via Tony Androkaitis on Twitter. But yeah, it kind of hurts the ability to do a lot of that experimenting whenever a lot of these players are currently trying to rehab an injury.
And thank you for bringing that up, because genuinely, A, I did not know that, and B, that does throw a wrench into the argument.
Yeah.
Especially since I don't know how long those guys have been injured, and now
Jackson Ivany's was like last week.
Yeah, and now I'm gonna big brain it a bit and kind of ask: could those injuries have forced Pickering up the ladder a bit?
I mean, certainly is taking away the safety net behind him. That's for sure.
Yeah, that is certain. Yeah, that is for certain. But that's fascinating. That's all. Like I said, good to know. Good to keep in the back pocket and know that. Well, the Penguins are in this situation now. This is how it's going to be. I mean, there are still, like I said, there are still other faces that could be utilized. But again, for now, this is what they're going to have to roll with. We'll see how long everyone's out for. That is an extensive injury list. That's
all
now
too. Which,
yeah,
come on now. Like any way we could even that out. I know we'd rather get rid of all of it, but Jesus, all on the blue line, especially, considering a lot of those names were names that you were hoping maybe one day would get an opportunity at the NHL level this season. But
yeah, I mean, you never know. I mean, like I said, Sebastian Aho is here for at least another year, so he's got time to get that other chance, that other opportunity. Who knows what happens with Hollowell and Kral, and St. Ivany's got a 3-year deal. So those two at least will have more chances down the line. We'll see what happens with the other two. It's going to be a build by committee type thing without Pettersson in the lineup, and that committee is far smaller than I was expecting going into this recording.
Yeah, shout out again to Tony Androkaitis of Around the AHL and Inside AHL Hockey, who does all things AHL, but specifically has a good focus on the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. And man, that list is crazy. You mentioned trade value and trade stock for Marcus Pettersson. I won't go too deep into it, but I'll say one thing. If you want to see trade stock, skyrocket, the Penguins have the 9th ranked penalty kill in the NHL right now. How far does it fall in his absence? Now, they do have the forwards to be able to have a good penalty kill still. And I think they have a laundry list of forwards that are able to penalty kill very well. But on defense, Pickering is overextended. He's going to be given a little bit more. Ryan Shea stepping in on a regular basis is probably not the best thing for that unit. And more Kris Letang, again, you're overextending him by probably giving him more time on the penalty kill as well. So it's going to be tough for them on the penalty kill, especially in his absence. But if it struggles, that's the one way that the trade value, even when he's not playing, is going to continue to tick up and up and up.
Yeah, and I don't foresee this happening, but that'll get his trade value up. I would at least expect him to play again in the Penguins uniform before that happens.
Yeah, I don't think this is a Gensel situation.
Yeah, unlike Gensel last season where it happened later. It happened on Valentine's Day, I believe.
Yep.
But still, I mean, who knows how quickly other teams want to hop on Pettersson now. Maybe they think the trade value is going down and maybe they want to strike while they can. It'll be fascinating to see going forward. I mean, maybe, just maybe, he comes back, and if this could get I don't want to get philosophical with it at all. So we'll just roll with he should come back soon enough, and continue to build that trade value one way or the other, and let the future hold what it holds.
Yeah, the Penguins have to hope that week to week is closer to 1-2 and not 3-4, because if it is, man, they do have the Christmas break next week, but after that, it is a sprint to the Four Nations face-off, not a marathon. It's a lot of games in a short amount of time. So we'll have to see what happens with this as we follow along with Marcus Pettersson's status. Outside of Marcus Pettersson, the Penguins have two players, and it's pretty obvious as to tell who, that they need to start stepping up a little bit more. Now, it's not in their play overall, but man, when you're talking about the Penguins having a 6-2-1 record, it is miraculous that these two players have barely contributed goal-scoring wise at all. Sidney Crosby has 0 goals in his last 9 games. We talked extensively about his goal-scoring drought last Thursday. He has 9 assists in those 9 games, which is nice. He's still at a point per game there, aided specifically by a 3-assist outing against the Montreal Canadiens in the Penguins' 9-2 victory last week. But still, 0 goals in 9 games, and you can go back further, 2 goals, and I believe it's 17 or 18 games at this point. Evgeni Malkin, meanwhile, has 1 goal scored in his last 16 games played. He, however, is not anywhere close to a point per game, 7 points in those 16 games played, which begs the question, Horwat, is it time for the Penguins, for the second time this season, to move Evgeni Malkin back on a line with Sidney Crosby?
Yeah, it might be. Much in the way of how I was trying to discuss the defenseman. I mean, you're the Pittsburgh Penguins in 2024-25. You're here to experiment. I mean, you didn't want to be, but that's been the hand you were dealt, and you just got to play with it. I wouldn't be angry at seeing those two get put back together on a line in terms of, in even more than just an experiment at this point, in genuinely trying to jumpstart both of them. Mm-hmm. The only question that I do follow that up with is, well, who's playing second line center? Because, I mean, even whenever it was Lars Eller doing it, it was still genuinely, all right, really, who's playing second line center, though? Mm-hmm. And nothing against Lars Eller, and then they ended up trading him. And now it is, Malkin back at that position. There's Cody Glass, Blake Lizotte. I mean, maybe Kevin Hayes bumps to fourth line center and everyone moves up one. But that feels pretty sketchy, honestly.
I mean, I agree with Cody Glass and Blake Lizotte moving up. I think Cody Glass has shown that he has that offensive upside, and I think that putting him with Bunting and Michael Bunting and Brian Rust could create a lot, because I would keep Raquel up with Crosby and Malkin. I think that's the unit. We've seen that as the post-penalty kill unit and the post-penalty kill line that Mike Sullivan has gone to in the last handful of games. I think that would end up being your first line. But I would put Cody Glass with Bunting and Rust. I'd bump Blake Lizotte up because I think Blake Lizotte needs to be bumped up in the lineup anyway. There's no way a guy that's playing the level that he is should be sitting on the fourth line. Meanwhile, I think there's a player that's playing higher in the lineup that is playing like a fourth liner, which is Drew O'Connor. I think you move him down and move him to center, and that's your middle there is Crosby, Glass, Lizotte, and O'Connor. And I get it. It's the same reason that I can't believe I'm arguing for this, but it's the same reason that you'd be wary of doing this in the first place, which is you're really stockpiling a lot of offensive talent on the first line, and you're leaving a lot to be desired in your bottom 9. But at the same time, I said when that first happened, are we that desperate already? Now I look at it and say, you are that desperate. I mean, 0 goals in 9 games for Sid, 1 in 16 for Malkin. And it's not like it didn't work the last time. They did it for 6 games, which we both said, hey, do it for a small sample size, kickstart both of these guys. And it did. It worked for the time being. Crosby in those 6 games had 9 points, 5 of them being goals. Malkin had 4 points in those 6 games, including 2 goals, and they took down one of the better teams in the National Hockey League, the Washington Capitals, before everything got switched up. Specifically with Crosby, though, it's desperation time, because I said he had 5 goals in 6 games when it was him and Malkin. He has 3 in the other 26 games that he's played this season. You're desperate to get Sidney Crosby on the score sheet, and I think you keep him with Raquel, because I think that's worked. Obviously, Rickard Raquel leading the team in goals, but you just need somebody to get Crosby the puck, because he still has it. He's not playing at the level that we all expected him to. He has dropped a level, but you need somebody to get him the puck, because I specifically watched this on Saturday. Brian Rust is a great hockey player. Rickard Raquel is a great hockey player, but neither of them are great at facilitating. Tape to tape, get it to Crosby in a scoring area. It just is not happening. Rickard Raquel is one of the best at keeping the puck on his stick, dangling through defenders, but when it comes to the time to make the pass, he just hasn't been able to complete it. Same too goes with Brian Rust. So these guys are great at finishing, and Rust has a hat trick on Thursday night. Rickard Raquel scores a goal and is playing very well, but Crosby needs to get going in the goal scoring category. The best way to do that, at least the one that I can see, is putting him with Evgeni Malkin.
And I don't hate it. It's just a savvy move at this point, because if it's useful to the team and both of them kind of wake up a bit and start producing, then it's not something to be angry at, and it is something that can genuinely benefit this team. The Penguins, I keep thinking it and saying it, they're in such a weird place that they have the talent and maybe the positioning to go for a playoff run, but at the same time, they have the talent and the positioning to not. They're in such a fascinating middle ground that they don't feel like a playoff team, yet they don't feel like a team willing to sell off at the deadline. It's going to be, and they also don't feel like a team that should just be holding steady either. It's tough to, I don't want to say it's tough to discuss them, but it does get confusing when trying to talk about the direction that they're going in this year and what these little, not even minuscule moves. I mean, moving Malkin up to a wing with Crosby's huge. It's tough to decide what kind of direction that means the team's going in, really. If they're trying to better the team, all right, they're going for it. Marcus Pettersson might be staying. And then, really, is he? This is where it gets tough.
Yeah, I mean, I think I view this on a less macro level. I think I view this as, whether you're going for it or not, Crosby and Malkin aren't going anywhere, and you need them to perform. You're trying to win hockey games, which you are. I don't care what anybody says. Nobody is tanking, right? Nobody is tanking. You are trying to win hockey games. You need Crosby and Malkin to be scoring more than a combined 1 goal in the last however many games played. So it's not good, and I think that on a micro level, you just need to get those 2 kickstarted. And as far as what the Penguins are, where the Penguins are at and what their direction is, they're in the worst place to be in professional sports. They're in the mediocre middle right now. And I don't see them dropping out of the middle and going to the bottom. And I don't see them pushing their way to the top. So it seems like they're going to be in the mediocre middle for most of the season unless something drastic happens. I'm still a little shocked that I'm making the argument for this, because both me and you were vehemently against doing this for a long term. But when you look at the fact that that was Crosby's best stretch of the season by far, and Malkin had a good stretch there and a good stretch at the beginning, but both of them have struggled. I mean, look at Malkin's scoring numbers. After he was separated from Crosby, non-existent. Since that day, non-existent. That's the last 16 games played, 1 goal. He's not been putting in a lot of assists either. So the Pittsburgh Penguins, they need to get their stars going, and the only way to do that right now seems to be putting them together, which is, again, a crazy place to be for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Let's move over and discuss Tristan Jarry a bit, because he made, I want to say, headlines. They weren't all over the place, but I saw a lot of people outside of Pittsburgh kind of making the rounds to this quote from Tristan Jarry. I thought he had a very good performance up into the overtime goal, which is just the story and the book on Tristan Jarry throughout his entire career, not just this season, is if he has a great game, he usually does something to make you say, well, it's great until, and then he does that. And I think the overtime goal is that moment for Tristan Jarry in Saturday night's performance. But he took exception to the second goal scored by Drake Batherson in the third period, saying, quote, "It's a shitty goal, honestly. I don't know how you take that out of the game, but I don't think you should be allowed to stand there and let the guy shoot it off of you. I think it's almost impossible to stop. It's a tough play, and I think it's not part of hockey." Horwat, when you saw that quote, did you have to say, let me go back and watch that goal, because I didn't think there was a goal scored by Ottawa in that game that's not part of hockey? What did you think of the quote by Tristan Jarry on Drake Batherson's goal on Saturday night?
I was very confused by it. I mean, Tristan Jarry is in a situation where he doesn't have too much room to say any goal against him is a goal that doesn't deserve to be in the league, or however he put it, is a bad goal, whatever. Considering the season that he's had up until this point, I don't care if the puck was swatted in over his own head for a clear high stick. You need to be stopping every puck that goes your way. You're not in the right position to be dogging on goals scored against you. And for what it's worth, this one, I've seen worse. The league has seen worse. I get that there's very much a discussion of what is and isn't a goal when it comes to things near and around the crease, goaltender interference, kicking, motions, this, that, the other. Tristan Jarry doesn't have the room to speak this year on that. And again, it also just wasn't a bad goal. Mm-hmm. You know, you, as the goalie, Tristan Jarry, need to make as many saves as you can. You need to make that one if possible. I get that's a tough one, and, you know, a pretty high percentage goal. At the same time, is he also getting on his defenseman there for not tying Batherson up a little bit more? It's going to get complicated, but I'd say just for the moment, dude, that's not the kind of comment you should be making in the situation that you yourself are in right now.
Yeah, at least in the Penguins sector of the internet, a lot of people use the quote loser mentality with Tristan Jarry for that one. And to be completely honest, I have a hard time defending him on that. I mean, impossible to stop. The puck was on the ice and went through your crease.
Yeah.
You are allowed to poke check. You are allowed to be on a better angle to where you're not going to let a puck go straight to the back corner post. And secondly, exactly what you mentioned there. Maybe if Matt Grzelcyk wasn't late to cover Drake Batherson, he could have moved him out of that position. Impossible to stop was crazy to me. I was like, because there are multiple ways to stop this from happening. One is on your end, poke check, and two is on your defender's end, get there in time to push Drake Batherson out of the way. At first, I thought it was Ryan Graves, who was also on the ice at the time, and I was like, I mean, the guy is 6'4". He should be able to do it, but it wasn't. It was Matt Grzelcyk, who's significantly less than 6'4", but is still an NHL defenseman and could make a play on that goal. So I couldn't believe when I went back and watched, because I did. I looked at that. I was like, what goal is he talking about? Because I didn't see anything that, again, is, quote, not a part of hockey. So, again, I have a hard time defending Jarry on the, loser mentality thing, because if you step up and you stop that shot from Brady Tkachuk, maybe you win the game, and maybe that second goal by Drake Batherson is rendered a moot point. But, it's a bad season for Jarry. These little stories that come out are just going to make it 10 times worse.
They are. And, you just give more fuel to other teams, to other, to the Senators, other players, all of that. It's, like I said, he's in no position to be saying, he's in no position to have quotes like that right now. And especially when the more you look at the replay, the more you realize, man, there's just nothing wrong there. There isn't. I mean, maybe Grzelcyk should have tied him up a little more. Maybe he should have poke checked as the pass went through his crease. It's a tough play. Like I said, it is a high percentage goal, but at the same time, you're the goalie. Stop the puck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, tend the goal, as Steve Dangle would say. But also, I think if they did try to take that out of hockey, I think that Evgeni Malkin and Sidney Crosby might take umbrage with that, considering they've scored a lot of goals over their career. And there was a time, I believe, during the 2017 playoffs that Malkin scored 2 or 3 goals by just putting his feet together on the back post and putting his stick down in front of his feet. And they just banked it off of him. Because if you can get it through, if the goaltender doesn't poke check, and if nobody else is going to play the guy, it's a goal. It's a high percentage. So I think Crosby and Malkin would both take umbrage with that being taken out of the game. And honestly, it's about as much of a hockey play as the face-off drop is. So, like, I don't understand where the issue was with Tristan Jarry. But all in all, it's hard to get on the guy because he has been playing well. It's just the same issues that we've seen throughout his entire career. Make the key save because you're making all these crazy saves to keep your team in it. And then at the end of the game, you give up an easy goal and it ends up costing your team. But Jarry, he might play tonight. He probably will play tonight because he's been playing in almost every game. Just needs to, I don't want to say what I was trending towards saying there. Obviously, we want our athletes to be able to speak on things, but let's read the room a little bit here and notice that is 100% a hockey play, and you could have been the one to stop it, but didn't. Let's close off this episode with a little discussion about the World Juniors, because every year for a long time, we looked at the World Juniors and we said, great tournament, some of the best hockey we get to watch every year. Would be nice if somebody on the Pittsburgh Penguins, prospect pool was able to actually make a team. Last year, we got Brayden Yager, and he went out and he played really well for a really bad Team Canada. This year, we got 3 players on 2 teams. Tanner Howe is selected to Team Canada. Kalle Kangas and Emil Pieneniemi both selected to Team Finland. Howe specifically has had himself a ridiculous year, drafted in the 2nd round by the Penguins this summer, injured before Penguins camp, which means he missed the Prospects Challenge in Buffalo. He missed the early portions of training camp. Then he gets sent back to the WHL in the Regina Pats, where he was captain. He gets injured before the season even starts, so he misses the beginning of the season there. Then, as captain, he gets traded to the Calgary Hitmen. He has 9 points in 6 games since arriving in Calgary, and now will be joining Team Canada for the World Junior Tournament in the late 2024, early 2025. How excited are you to finally see Tanner Howe play some high leverage hockey as a member of the Penguins organization?
It's good to see. It's always fun to see. Like we said, we don't see it very often, but Penguins prospects getting into these big tournaments. I mean, we saw it with Yager last year, and not only that, but whenever he was still with the organization, got to see Yager advance all the way to the Memorial Cup as well. But this is international hockey. It is some of these junior players' dreams to play in this World Juniors tournament. It's exciting, and for Tanner Howe, good to see him fully recover from a tough start to the year, a tough summer off season into a successful. I forget, that's the WHL, correct? Yes. Into what has so far been a successful WHL run or a WHL season, getting put into this tournament. Going to be fun to watch, and it should be a huge boost for him, mentally, physically, and getting into this sort of thing. A big boost in the eyes of the organization as well.
Now, I understand that we only had really Brayden Yager last year to watch, but if we knew what was coming down the pike, we could have watched Rutger McGroarty win gold as the captain for Team USA last year.
Could have, but actually, I can remember going into the room every now and again when that tournament was on and it was on TV. I forget how Canada lost. It was in overtime, but I forget to who. In the few seconds, I think we got into the room just a few seconds after Canada lost, and there's this close-up shot of Brayden Yager at one point. You could just feel the air in the room kind of get sucked out because everyone felt bad for the guy. And it's part of the tournament, and seeing Rutger McGroarty in it last year, it was hard to miss him, at least. So
yeah.
Sure, as Penguins fans who may not have been looking as hard, but it was tough to miss, and what he can bring and should be able to bring soon enough to this team.
Yeah, McGroarty had a heck of a World Juniors last year, heating up a little bit at the AHL level. Now 9 points in 20 games, 3 of them being goals. He scored the teddy bear goal a couple days ago, which is always a nice little momentum boost, right? You love seeing that, and it's a nice little highlight to put just kind of check marked into your resume. But World Juniors begins on Boxing Day, December 26th, and runs through the first week of January. Should be a lot of fun. Hoping Team USA can pull it out for another consecutive gold medal there, and then maybe they pull it out in the Four Nations face-off and just kick 2025 off with USA kicking the crap out of Team Canada. Sorry, Tanner. Hope Tanner Howe does great, but gets a silver medal because Team USA takes home the gold. But that's going to do it for this episode of The Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this one. Remember, you can find us on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Make sure you like, share, subscribe if you liked this video, or you can check us out anywhere you get your podcast from. We'll see you guys next time.